Is this really progress? Israeli and Palestinian leaders start their regular head-to-head meetings. Condoleezza Rice touted the development, but many people in the region say it's all for show and a big waste of time. This is Inside Story. Hello, I'm Jane Dutton. It's been spun as a positive sign. Palestinian President Mahmoud Abbas and Israeli Prime Minister Ehud Olmert walking into the first of what are supposed to be fortnightly meetings, as promised to US Secretary of State Condoleezza Rice. On the agenda, security and humanitarian issues, as well as the exchange of prisoners. But the disputes at the heart of the conflict, including the borders of any future Palestinian state, the status of Jerusalem and the right of return of Palestinian refugees remain off the table. All this leads people to wonder what exactly these meetings will accomplish and if they serve any purpose at all. A Palestinian official doubted the talks would bring results and warned reporters not to expect any miracles different from an Israeli view.
They had a very positive meeting which talked about the ongoing issues between Israel and the Palestinians.
Well, is this meeting a breakthrough or more of the same thing we've seen over the past few years? Abbas and Olmert have met 6 times in the past 10 months, and it seems that all they've accomplished is agreeing to talk more. They first met in June 2006. That was to discuss the status of captured Israeli corporal Gilad Shalit. He still hasn't been released. They talked again in December and have now met 4 times in total this year. Joining us now are our guests from Tel Aviv. Zalman Shoval is the former Israeli ambassador to Washington and is currently the head of the Foreign Relations Department at the Likud Party. Also with us is Mr. Hamzan Abu Shanab, Palestinian political commentator, journalist and a professor of media and education at Gaza's Al-Azhar University. And finally from Washington, D.C., Clayton Swisher, Al Jazeera's U.S. policy analyst. Ambassador Shoval, if I can start with you, are these meetings a sign of progress or simply a waste of time?
Look, I wouldn't call it a waste of time. It's always good to talk, to meet, to have a cup of coffee together. But will something concrete come out of that? I rather doubt it, mainly because Mr. Abu Mazen, Mr. Abbas, doesn't seem to have the capability to deliver anything. You mentioned before the release of the abducted soldier Gilad Shalit, which he promised several times, and you have the BBC correspondent, which he cannot, for some reason, free either. So, you know, to talk is good, to try to solve some local problems, technical problems, economic problems, that's okay. But will this be a breakthrough? I'm afraid not.
Mr. Abu Shanab, even Saeb Erekat, the Palestinian chief negotiator, said not to expect any miracles. Does anyone in the region expect anything at all?
Yes, I think the Americans are expecting something from these meetings. They are expecting to a calm down between the Israelis and the Palestinians in the Palestinian-Israeli file. They are expecting also a calm down in the Lebanese file, the Korean file, and the Iraqi file, so they can focus on the Iranian file. That's what they are expecting. But the Palestinians and the Israelis are expecting nothing from such meetings.
What about other players in the region?
I think Egypt, Saudi Arabia, and other moderate countries are expecting the calm down because they are going in lullaby with the American plan for calming down the region. But they are also expecting an American push, an American support for their regimes so they can stay in their heading of their countries, but not to have more American pressure over their regimes. So these are the expectations. The Palestinians are the only ones who are not receiving anything from such meetings, but they are receiving only PR or public relation meetings between Mahmoud Abbas and Ehud Olmert, the weakest leaders on the ground, on the earth, I think.
Okay, they're viewed as the weakest leaders. What is the view, though, from the US? Is Condoleezza Rice expecting anything to come out of dealing with these leaders who are considered weak?
Wants to see Mahmoud Abbas and his regime, Ehud Olmert and his regime, working in a kind of contact between each other, so she can get back again with a big fuss, with a big boom for the media, the American media, telling the American people, hey, we are successing, we are doing something, we can achieve something. We did calm down the situation in the Palestinian territories between Israelis, and we are supporting the Israelis in a good way. So we are a good administration. You can go and vote for us again, for the Republicans in the next elections they are going to have within 18 months. So the Condoleezza Rice is working to support the Republicans in the next period, while they are working for their elections in next 16 months, I think, or 18 months maybe.
Okay, Mr. Swisher, is that the view from where you are?
Partly. I think the United States, at least what we're seeing now, is murmurings of a political horizon of some sort, and I think by that Secretary Rice means final status. The problem is the United States is not showing the courage to discuss and say out loud and yell from the rooftops the four core issues of borders, refugees, security, and Jerusalem. And by showing this political cowardice right now, they're giving in to the forces in the region. The United States is also pursuing a policy of strengthening Fatah at the expense of Hamas, and this is going to undo the ceasefire that was reached in Mecca, and it won't be very productive to be talking political horizon if the situation in Gaza and West Bank result in civil unrest. So the United States is not acting aggressively enough, and I think that the other commentators are partly correct. The United States wants to project the appearance of progress with these very meetings, but I disagree with Ambassador Chauvel. There is something wrong with just having a cup of coffee. For the Palestinian optic, every time Mahmoud Abbas meets with Prime Minister Olmert and comes back with nothing but photo images of him kissing the Prime Minister, this hurts him domestically. And so if they're going to have meetings, they need to be talking about these difficult issues.
Now, news of this meeting first came out at the end of March when Condoleezza Rice managed to get the two men to meet every 2 weeks. She seemed pretty positive about it. Here's what Rice had to say.
I think that perhaps the most important thing is they've agreed to talk together. Now, occasionally I'll show up and I'll talk with them, but nothing can substitute for the importance of the parties sitting down together regularly talking about the issues before them.
Ambassador, does it help or hinder to have the US involved in these talks?
No, I think it helps to have the US involved. The United States, in spite of everything, is the world's only superpower. It will remain in the Middle East probably forever. And even though in the wake of the Iraqi situation it doesn't look too good, the United States is a vital factor in any arrangement, as it was with regards to Egypt, as it was with regards to the other Arab parties, especially Jordan, with whom we have made peace.
But is it a vital player for Israel in particular?
Is it a vital what?
Player for Israel in particular. It's quite important for Israel that they have US on site.
It is very important because the US-Israeli relationship, of course, is a fact of life. And I wouldn't say what some of my colleagues on the panel have just said, that the Americans don't have the courage, and then, for instance, that it's only in order to help the Republicans win the next elections. I think the Americans are genuine about that. They may be mistaken, but they're genuine about it. And I would add something. You know, I've been involved in peacemaking or trying to make peace since Camp David I with President Sadat, and then later on with Jordan. And these things did work. But if we are going to put on the table tomorrow the most controversial issues like refugees, like Jerusalem, like borders, I can guarantee you that within 24 hours or less, there'll be a new conflagration, everything will break up, there will be, obviously will be disagreement, because things like that have to take time. There have to be stages, there have to be phases. As the roadmap, by the way, was talking about. If tomorrow we say, okay, let's sit down immediately, talk about the permanent status issues, Israel will say it's all ours, the Palestinians will say it's all ours. I know exactly what will happen. Total disagreement and an end to any chance of peace talks in the foreseeable future. So let's be wise about it and not be rash about it. Whether the Americans can be more helpful or not, I don't know. At the end of the day, it will depend on the Palestinians, on the Arab world, which has to give the Palestinians the umbrella for making progress with Israel. And of course, it depends on Israel. And Israel is prepared, under whichever government, to make compromises, to make concessions. What we heard in the meantime from Riyadh is, unless you agree to our demand with regards to refugees, unless you agree now a priori to go back to the 67 borders, including Jerusalem, including the Sea of Galilee, there won't be any negotiations. This is not acceptable to Israel, whether it's a Likud government, as we shall hopefully soon have, or whether it's about the present Israeli government.
Okay, Mr. Abu Shadab, I mean, do you agree with that? Is that what the issue is?
No. I think Mr. Cheval is talking about something so pinky. I think that he's talking about dreams happening here in Palestine, either in the Israeli territories or in the Palestinian territories. I just want to ask Mr. Cheval directly if he can have an answer. I don't believe that he has an answer, which is, does Ehud Olmert has the strength to sign on an agreement between the Palestinians and the Israelis? I don't think so. Ehud Olmert is facing a very bad situation inside the Israeli society. He is having only 2% of supporters among the Israeli crowds. This is an Israeli official polls that we have seen results during the previous week, 2 weeks and month ago. So I think that Ehud Olmert is not strong enough that he can go in negotiations, either dialogues, neither even to sign an agreement with the Palestinians.
And Ambassador, he is facing 9, possibly 10 investigations against him. I mean, is he the man to pull this off?
Mr. Abu Shadab. I agree with him, but you know, I'm not going to badmouth the Israeli government on Al Jazeera. I'll do this directly to them. But you're right, the Israeli government, although it's the constitutional, legal, elected government of the State of Israel, is politically weak. There's no doubt about that. And that perhaps is another factor to be taken into consideration. On the Arab side, why do a deal with a government which can't deliver either? Why not wait till there's a new government in Israel? And the experience has been good with regards to Egypt, with regards to Jordan. Let's wait and try to make real progress.
I mean, Mr. Swisher, yes. Is there any point in doing business with either of these gentlemen? Both of them very weak at home.
Yes, there is. The approach that's being advocated by Ambassador Cheval, that is the incrementalist approach, piece by piece, and maybe I can say what he can on this program, is that the Israeli government wants to continue to build facts on the ground. And this is both with the construction of the separation wall and the settlements, particularly around East Jerusalem, which is going to make a two-state solution impossible. Until the United States and until Israel decides that it values security and peace more than it does Palestinian land, then there will be no point in progressing. The United States right now, again, is sitting back. They're waiting to see what the outcome of this investigation is going, the multiple investigations into Prime Minister Olmert is going to result in. They're waiting for labor elections in June. And they're approaching this at a pace that just is not going to work. The final 2 years of the Clinton administration was distracted by approaching Syria, by trying to phase through incrementally on the Oslo peace process. And it was only late in President Clinton's administration when they finally tried to tackle the 4 core issues, and they didn't get there. But fortunately, the solution has been discussed quite repeatedly since the Bush administration has taken office. There's the Geneva Initiative, there's the Clinton parameters, there's the Arab Peace Initiative. And so there's things to negotiate with on a basis. For example, the Arab Peace Initiative. Ambassador Cheval is mischaracterizing this. The Arabs are saying, let's negotiate on the Arab Peace Initiative as a basis for discussions. Israel won't accept it. And they're not accepting it because they still don't value security more than they do Palestinian land.
Okay, we're going to talk a little bit more about that initiative after the short break. When we come back as well, we go to the streets to find out what ordinary Palestinians and Israelis are saying. Stay with us.